So in order to take the fuel pressure out of the fuel line, you have to undo this connector. It goes up right here. It's right in front of your rear diff on top of the gas tank. There's a push deal and you gotta like wiggle it out. Mine was super dusty in there, so it was kind of stuck. The next step is letting it run until it runs out of fuel. It'll take a little bit, but after this, the fuel pressure from the low pressure system has been relieved. Now you have to wait at least 2 hours before touching the high pressure. The next step will be taking all these hoses off and connectors for your throttle body, your EGR. I'm leaving the air box because I can work around it. I already did the passenger side, but I'm doing this video because of the left side. You have to take everything off and it's kind of a bitch. Now that you have this pipe off, next step will be your throttle body. Be sure to unplug the cable. Should be 4 8mm bolts. Now that the throttle body's removed, be sure to keep up with this gasket or replace it. It's suggested that you replace it every time you take it off. Next is going to be this EGR pipe. You disconnect it from up here, 2 8s, and then 2 more 8s down there. So to pull this EGR thing out, there's this little rubber seal. So you kind of got to wiggle it gently out and then twist it to pull the whole thing. The next step is going through everything and making sure you got all your stuff disconnected from your intake. This connector back here. You have to disconnect these heater hose from your intake. It's just little pop rivet things. So one of those plastic trim poppers work perfectly fine for this. There's two different spots. One kind of in the back underneath the computers, and one up next to the EGR. I went ahead and disconnected the wire that was on the back of this thing just so I could get it out of my way to get these 8mm bolts on the intake. I think there's one back here somewhere. Hell, I don't know. To pull the intake, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8mm bolts. And I kind of forgot, but there is a plastic, I don't know if you can see it. There's plastic connectors in the back that you have to pull off. Kind of those pop rivet deals. Now that the intake is completely out, make sure you replace these seals on the bottom and on throttle body. And while you're in here, go get a shop towel with some brake clean and just wipe this all down. Make sure it's all nice and clean. After it's all wiped off with brake clean, I'm gonna just cover it with some paper towels, so nothing bad will get in the motor. At this point, you can reach all of your 3 other coils, and it's got a little deal you can push up at the back with a pick or pocket screwdriver, or pocket knife or something, and they come right out, and these are all 8mm. Now that the coils are removed, you can stick your socket on the end of your ratchet and stick it on down in there and take your spark plugs out. Now you have to gap all of your spark plugs to 52 thousandths. Now that all your spark plugs are gapped correctly, you can hand tighten them with your extension and socket, and then go back and tighten them with a ratchet. Not too tight. I don't know what the torque spec is. Just tight enough and not too loose. Don't want to pull the threads out of the head or anything else like that, so just use your best judgment. After you put all your spark plugs in, get them firm and snug down, you can put your coils back in. You should be able to push down and feel like a click or something, and then put these bolts in. I had to put a new one because I lost it, and then put your connectors back on and everything else, and now you're done with this part. Now it's just throwing the intake back on. Now just get your new gaskets put on and everything else. If you want to clean it up, you can. If not, who cares? Ain't that big of a deal. Just gotta make sure there's no dirt or or anything on the surface. And putting the intake in, just gently slide it all back. Make sure you're not gonna mess up any of these wires or connections, and make sure everything's kind of pulled out of the way. And then just tighten down all these 8mm bolts until they're firm. Now that your intake is tightened down, just start going through and connecting everything you took off, and make sure you don't leave any of these connectors undone. Don't forget to install your EGR valve. Just kind of push it in like this and be very gentle, or don't, I don't care. It's not my problem. Now grab your throttle body and bolt it back up. After you put your air box, pipe, whatever you want to call it, back on, the one more step to do is in the rear of the truck where that plug that you unplugged earlier. Plug it back in. I don't know why they told us to unplug it, but whatever. Final step, just crank it up, I guess.